Thank you guys for watching this. I know that I disappear for like long periods of time, but I'm always just researching and digging into other things. So I wanted to go into Genesis 1, and I know we've been in Genesis 1 before, but the word is so amazing how it feeds your spirit different things according to what you need at that time. I've been in Genesis 1 about 2 times in depth now, and this is my third time, and I'm seeing something all new, for the first time. And so I wanted to go over it. So if you go into Genesis 1 with me, it says, "In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth," heavens plural. And I think that we skip over that part where it says heavens because we can't physically identify that. So we focus on the earth part because the rest of it talks about the earth, or we think the rest of it talks about the earth. So that was interesting to me. He says that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Um, so if you studied Hebrew, because we know that he's the God of the Hebrews, and Hebrew was the original language and it's his language. If you study Hebrew, you will learn that Hebrew is an active language. Every word in Hebrew is functioning. So it's not like adjectives, verbs, nouns, everything is verb, function, function, function. So if you take darkness away from the noun that we know it as, the absence of light, and you look at darkness as a verb, darkness is more like chaos. Darkness is uncertainty. It's darkness is an element or an action of not having clarity, being chaotic. It's not orderly. And so I was speaking to a friend before. My friend was saying, how things are learned behaviors and why are children afraid of the dark. And when you think of darkness in that way, because then he says after that, the Father said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and he said, "It is good." So if darkness exists and he's not satisfied with that darkness, that chaos, and he says, "Let me bring light to the situation," and he determined that the light was good in comparison to the darkness, then in our spirits, even when we encounter darkness, our spirits still crave light because there was a need for light to exist and our spirits still want it. That's why children will want light, even though nothing traumatic has ever happened to them in the dark. Something about darkness lets us know we want some light to be there. So I want you to put a pin in verse 3 where he says, "Let there be light." Okay? Because if we scoot down to 14, it says, "And Elohim said, 'Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to divide the day from the night.'" But in verse 3, he created light. So why is he saying, "Let's create light" twice? Well, if you think about it, it means that there were different lights that were created. And when he says, "Let there be light in the expanse of the heavens," he's identifying that light, and that's what we know as the sun. But the light that he creates in verse 3 is the contrast to the darkness. So if we have darkness as being chaos, the absence of order, then we know that the contrast to that as light is clarity and it's order. So the light in 3 isn't like sunshine, it's clarity, it's illumination on things. So these are two different lights that he creates in Genesis 1. So if you've not looked at that, that's very interesting to look at. Then it was interesting to me where he said, it goes down some, and in verse 6 it says, "And Elohim said, 'Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters.'" And when we look at that, we always think, "Ooh, an expanse that divides the waters from the waters." And we think about the waters above and the waters below, and we're like, "Ooh, what's in the middle is earth, is land." Well, let's look at that some more. He says, "The waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse," and it was so. "And Elohim called the expanse heaven." That is so deep to me. Okay, so consider that. The waters above, the waters below, and he calls the expanse? Heaven. Well, he said, we're thinking, we thought what was in between that was earth. Well, no, because if you go to 9, he said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And he called the dry land earth. So it's not earth. So the only thing between the heavens above and the heavens, the waters above and the waters below, is the expanse that he calls heaven, which we call atmosphere. We look at that as atmosphere, the space above the land, and we always considered the waters above to be the sky because we thought that that was a reflection of the ocean, which we considered to be the waters below, right? That was really interesting to me. But wait, there's more. So then he goes and he says in 14 again, let there be lights in the expanse, which he calls the heavens, to divide the day from the night. So these lights, that the sun and the moon, are in the expanse that he calls the heavens. Well, where do we consider the sun and the moon to be? We consider the sun and the moon to be in space. Isn't that what they teach us? The sun and the moon is outside of our atmosphere. It's orbiting around the world. So it's in space. But wait, because it says in the scripture, the sun and the moon, those greater lights, are in the expanse, in the heavens, and the waters above are above the expanse. So if the sky, which we thought were the waters above, are supposed to be above the expanse, then where are the real waters above? Because the waters above have to be above the sun and the moon. Because the sun and the moon, those lights, are in the expanse between the waters above and the waters below. So now consider, well, where are those waters above and below? You know, if you ever flew on a plane, and I noticed this several times, I always feel as though I'm level with the sun when we reach a high altitude. So I was always like, is this sun really outer space? Because I think I'm directly across from it when I'm flying in a plane. This is just something really interesting I don't think we've ever paid attention to in Genesis. So where are the waters above? Because not only, if you want to look at outer space, that also mimics the sea, the oceans. If you look at how deep it is and how the further out you get, the darker it gets because it's the furthest, so you go further away from the sun. The deeper you go into the ocean, into the abyss, the darker it gets. The more pressure, the way life forms change, the deeper you get. I mean, it's right here. It's also interesting because, and I know I'm a little all over the place, but if you go back up to 2, it says, and the Ruach of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And if I'm thinking about his spirit moving upon the face of the waters, I immediately think about waves and the tides. Because, you know, we think about the relationship to the moon with the tides. But it says right here, his spirit moved upon the face of the waters. And if it moved, that means it wasn't still. And if you see water moving, that's a wave. I've just been blown away in Genesis 1. We always separate God from science. We think that they are mutually exclusive. But what if the way science talks about things happening is just because they exclude God from the picture, and all they have to do is include him and things are still the same and still make sense? Why do we feel as though they are mutually exclusive instead of him being the greatest mathematician and scientist to exist? He created it. This is just your earthly way, the way your mind can put things together. We put it together in the scientific method. But he is the one who put it together and laid it out for us to understand. This is so interesting to me because then I keep hearing in Genesis 1, and Elohim said, this is verse 11, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass. He says this several times. In 24, he said, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth living creatures. You keep hearing while he's doing this creation, let the earth bring forth, let the earth bring forth. And I'm thinking to myself, the earth is bringing forth all this stuff from the same soil, but it's different species of things. So if the earth is bringing forth, my mind shot to Darwinism immediately, because churches either teach you Christianity or they teach you Darwinism, but they don't ever consider it's the same thing. His day and his time are not the same as ours. So now you look at it and you say, okay, the earth is bringing forth. It didn't just snap and a cow was standing up. It didn't just snap and a plant and a tree was standing up. What if this took time? And over the time, these organisms started evolving into what they are now. So you start with the small organism, just like Darwin says, and evolution occurs and it turns into something else. And then at the end of it, you have the organism. And I'm thinking this is so deep, because we always say we're just a few chromosomes removed from a different species. You have the gorilla, the ape, the monkey. You have, plants that look so much like other plants. And my friend brought to my attention orchids that can mimic animals in their environment. And we come from the same soil. Even man, he pulled man from the soil. Man was created from the soil. We all come from the same base. That's the soil. And this is evolution over time. God is not excluded from science. That is just our way of explaining, without the spiritual conversation, how things have come to be. This, you guys, I'm going to go into a little bit more before I let you go on Genesis 1, but it's been super deep, and I want us to consider these things. Then it says in 28, and remember, Hebrew is a functioning language. So it says in 28, the first command he gave to man, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. So wordplay, choice of words, be fruitful and multiply and replenish. Well, this is the first time we hear him creating man, right? So if this is the first time man is here, why doesn't he say be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth up? Why does he choose the word replenish, refill? What am I filling it back up from? Something else was here and had filled it. And remember, in the beginning, it was darkness. It was without form. It was void. Look at the letters that make up the word darkness in the Hebrew language. I think if you Google it, or if you know Hebrew, I think the letters are Resh, which is man's head, first, or chief. I think it's Resh, and I had it up on my Google. I think it's Resh, and then I think it's Zayin, which is plow or weapon or to cut off. And then it's Shin, to eat, consume, or destroy. And then it's, what is the other one? Tav. I think Tav is the other one. It's a mark or a sign or a covenant. So it's destruction. The darkness was destruction of something. It was a weapon to destroy something that had been there before. The darkness was the destruction of something that had been there before. So if you have a bomb and you set off a nuclear bomb somewhere, it destroys the structure of what was there prior. It was void and without form. And when I spoke to my cousin about this, we remembered, look at Noah and the flood. Look at Sodom and Gomorrah. The Father has a track record of destroying the things he is not pleased with. So because our minds are so finite, this is our history. Who is to say that there was not a creation before us, and we don't have any of their history? Because for one, it's not our business, because it would be too much for us to handle, and we wouldn't be able to focus on what he wanted us to be focused on. And just like when cultures take over other cultures, they destroy, the history of the people before, because they want to take over, and they want you only to know the history that they want you to know. So what if there's just no account of what was before us? Remember, it was void and without form, but the Father was here. And he actually created the heavens in Genesis 1 So where was he residing before that? Because it said his ruach, his spirit, was hovering over the face of the waters. So he was here. So what else was here that he created before us? It's deep, you guys. Stop only listening to what you are told in church. Pick up your scriptures and read them for yourself. There's so much in here that if you just stop and look at the words, you're like, wait, that word has a meaning. Let me connect that word, because it has changed the entire meaning of what I thought that verse was. You will see that all throughout scriptures if you study it for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm asking you to study for yourself. Another thing, and I'll try to make this the last thing because this is deep in and of itself. Just like evolution, I believe man has mutated their body over time. Why do I say that? Our original diet is in Genesis 1, verse 11 and 12. And it said, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and fruit, trees yielding fruit after its own kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after its own kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in it after its own kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Is it right there? It's somewhere in 1. But anyway, he says that this is your food to eat. So our diet is laid out for us in Genesis 1. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Genesis 1, verse 29. At the end of verse 29, he talks about the in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. Our diet is laid out for us. We're vegan. From creation, we're vegan. So, yeah, the Father is graceful and merciful. You can do things. You can live in sin and not die that exact same day. You can go kill someone and the Father doesn't strike you down immediately. You'll get jail time if you're found. You know, you can fornicate and you don't die immediately. You might get an STD or have children. You're living in sin. So just because the Father allows us to eat meat doesn't mean that was the original design of our bodies. It wasn't. So if we were originally herbivores, I don't believe we had canines or bicuspids in the beginning. We didn't have a need for them. And the Father is intentional and purposeful. So he's not going to give us teeth that we don't need to use. I believe we have flat teeth, like cows and other herbivores have flat teeth. And over time, when we started introducing meat into our bodies, we evolved, just like evolution over time. Also, if you look at things and they say, oh, you need to eat brain food, what percentage of our brain does science tell us that we use? A very small percentage of our brain, right? And we're told that we can do things to access the other parts of our brain, certain drugs or certain foods or certain, meditations and things like that. But listen, we consider a lot of the vegetables and herbs and fruit to be brain food. Well, listen, God again would not have given us all of the brain we have without the desire for us to use it. But we no longer eat brain food in the quantities that we were supposed to eat brain food, which means we don't have access to the brain. We've actually cut off our access by polluting our bodies with the meats and with the other things, the sugars and things that we eat. So we are not feeding our brains and we can't access them. That is why certain foods are called brain foods. Amazing, super amazing. Think about it. Your body functions better. And another reason I believe we mutated ourselves is because, think about it. If we didn't originally eat meat, our bodies didn't have to have the enzymes and the bacteria in our digestive tract that we have now that breaks down the meat and prevents us from having infections and things like that. Those enzymes that allow us to digest the meat and pass it through us. And if you research how long it takes meat to digest in the body, you'll see it was not a natural process for us. It takes way longer, because our bodies, the machine was not originally made to break it down. We're introducing the blood of other living things into our organs. That wasn't natural. So the Father allows us to still function, but it's not optimal. We're not performing at an optimal level. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I'm vegan yet, but this is knowledge that I'm receiving. And so once you get the knowledge, you move forward and you do something with it. Right under 20 minutes. Okay, I hope you guys got to the end. Hope it didn't bore you to death. I hope that it was interesting to you, and I'm going to come back with another video on Genesis 3.